now, ready for activity 2. We are going to label or create a diagram or a cycle that can be labeled or put things into. So what I've done in the resource section is put a copy of my example of this. You can use that to kind of deconstruct kind of how we had, or you can create your own, but basically this is to show you how you can make one from scratch. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you the screens. All right, so this is kind of the example. I was talking about something like this. So what I'm going to do is I would encourage you to have your video on one side and maybe your new drawing on another if you have a big enough screen. But I'm going to drag this presentation out so that we have two sides to this, and I'm going to make sure this fits just on the one side and this one on the other. Perfect. All right, and so I am going to go to activity 2, which is this one right here. On yours, you just go down to the resource section and you'll have this same activity. And so by splitting your screen, and if you're not sure how to do that, please feel free to ask. Usually it's on a Chromebook, it's Alt and a bracket. On a Windows machine, it's Windows and the left and right keys. And then if you're on a Mac, if you hold down and open up the largest dot kind of to maximize it, it allows you to put it in different slots. So anyway, all right, so now that we have this, and we'd be working side by side, so your video would be on the right and on the left would be your activity. Let me open this up full screen so you can see this. All right, so as you noticed here, this is your activity 2. Create a diagram or cycle with movable labels. Okay, so how did I create this? Well, let's deconstruct this. So we have text boxes with black and white. This makes it easier so you don't have to have a border. It also makes it easier for people to drag because they see the entire color and it's not just this white space. Of course, text is just typed in, so I just made boxes and typed them in rather than putting text box and grouping them with text, with an object. So you can just make an object and type text inside. Then I made some arrows. See different arrows here. So I just used the arrow keys. And then I had a picture that I brought in, and I brought in a transparent picture. So let's kind of look at this from a side thing. So first thing I did is brought in the image. So how do I bring in images? Remember, it's insert image, and go ahead and find an image of something you would like to bring in. And if you want to choose a different face or something like that, you can look up something like face clip art and see and bring in something else, or bring in something like this if you're doing similar activity and use this instead. Okay, because they're still labeling and putting parts on it, and you would just have them spaced. And then you also have your arrows. So how did I make the arrows? Simply went to the line tool and went down to arrow. And if you want to make thicker arrows, you can. And make sure you don't go to the purple because it'll snap them in place. And so once I made one, what I like to do typically is look at my line settings and make sure I have them how I want them. Maybe I want this one to be an open. That's fine. Maybe I change the thickness and maybe the color. There we go. Got an extra one in there. And so now I have this shape. I'm going to put it wherever I want. Remember Control D to duplicate. And you just move the arrows around. And you can do Control D a bunch of times. Make sure you leave enough space for them to put text. And I think you get the idea here. So then the last part is these boxes right here. So you can see I can drag and move them. But, ooh, I ran into a problem here. Why do I have a problem? It's because this is not in the back. So make sure you right click and order and send whatever you need to the back. Now that makes it much easier. So this object can be moved to wherever I need it. But to make that, I just went to my shapes and I picked the shape that I wanted. There's my squares, basically your rectangular shapes are right here, but if you want to use other ones, that's fine too. Those are flowchart processes down here, so these would actually work better with the lines and the purple lines where they connect. But let's just choose a rectangle and make it however big I want. And notice it's already in black because that's how I had it before as a default. So that's what's nice is once you make one, you can keep it up here. But let's say I want to totally change this and I want to do, red, and I don't want a border. So now when I double click on the area, then I can type in whatever I want. So type in the English equivalent here, change my font, change my font size, and you just have to kind of adjust to how you want that to work. And then you can decide whether you want to use any formatting. There we go. I might want to change this to white. So I'm going to click on the A after highlighting, change it to white. There we go. And now I can just, since it's centered, it'll stay in place. There we go. So now I have the same version. So that's your first activity. Go ahead and make things. Think about what we had to do. We had to insert shapes. If you're using some sort of cycle and you're doing something with the flow charts or connecting lines, make sure you use those purple. It'll connect it exactly. And you're inserting images. If you have a table or text box, depending on what you decide to do, you can put that in there. And of course, you're resizing things and you're aligning objects. So please take your time on these activities. If you want to share them, you are free to post and share them with me. I'd be glad to look at them and see what, give you my opinion on what you did or give you some pointers. The more you get practice with these things, the better you get at them. But now you understand the kind of how those work. And remember, if you needed to change the size of the template or the size of the actual canvas, you can always drag at the bottom right. So, all right, activity 3 coming up.